basically, we went on a blind date with Christine and two of her friends, and when I looked across the table at Denny's restaurant in Saramonte, a little hot spot. I looked across the table at Christine, and I knew this is the woman I'm going to marry right here. So.
I think it was just we looked so hot in those uniforms. I also know in my world you have to be married to have sex. So we got married.
We did get married in a little Salvation Army hall at 1150 Mission Street on January 24th, 1981. And after the initial experience of just enjoying the fact that God loved me, that every day I woke up and I knew that He loved me and I knew I was going to heaven because of what Christ had done for me on the cross, that experience faded somewhat, but I began reading all the books that we in our circle read, going to all the movies that people in our circle go to, going to all the conventions and all the other teachings that there are. And I realized something very disturbing about this world, that it is an arena of combat between good and evil, between darkness and light, between God and Satan. And that's basically on God's side were people like me, people that were born again by the Spirit of God, filled with the Holy Spirit of God, and maybe might be raptured someday. But arrayed against us was a dark army of all these other people. For example, all the world religions that basically teach a defective and dysfunctional means of salvation. Then all the various cults, the Watchtower, the Mormons, etc., Scientology. And then there's also the huge pornography industry and the abortion industry. And then, of course, there's the gay agenda. Those people that would teach that men can love men and that women can love women and that that's a normal lifestyle when in fact it's an abomination in the nostrils of God. So, I mean, that's...
But there was a good side too. I mean, if you think about it, whatever faith you're in, to you it seems normal, but crazy to everybody else.
Yeah.
I mean, some people believe when you get to heaven you get 40 virgins. I don't want 40 virgins. Or, you get to have your own planet and make your own babies and send them to Earth, or you're going to get reincarnated as an ant or whatever. But everybody else's thing sounds crazy. Yours sounds normal. But there must be some reason people are in these religions, and one of them is they're a wonderful community. I mean, Christianity, there's a billion of us on the planet. We can't all be crazy. Okay. No, I don't. So, on the other hand, we just have a whole community of people. You know, we have Sunday school and go to movies and have a shared faith and a shared goal and do things in the world. So it was really kind of, still again, a wonderful life for us. However, in our marriage, we were having some conflict.
Yeah. That addiction that I picked up when I was 10 years old, you know, my parents are battling it out upstairs, that stuck with me all those years. And basically it kept coming back and coming back and coming back. You know, you talk about a battle of light and darkness. I had one going on inside my own soul. And basically I thought, well, now that I'm saved, I'll never look at porn again. Well, it came back in. Now that I'm married, it'll never come back again. But it kept coming back and back, and it brings with it not just, you know, pictures or whatever, but it brings dishonesty, deception, and deep, you know, trauma and disappointment to Christine. In fact, we were sitting in a therapist's office in the East Bay one day, and the therapist said, "Mark, do you think you should tell your wife what's really going on?" And I confessed to her that about a sexual act that took place between me and another person outside our marriage. Christine was devastated, and I thought our marriage was over.
And I thought it was over too. That probably was pretty much one of the worst moments of my life. It just, you know, just a betrayal and a violation of everything I believe in my relationship. And but I also know Mark, and I also know, maybe it's because I was in the therapist's office, but I know what he was doing. Addiction isn't me, and it isn't really about me. Mm-hmm. And I knew he was struggling with an addiction, and I know who Mark is. And it seemed like this is something we can work on. somehow, then what happened was this worst thing that ever happened to me became one of the best things that ever happened to me because we went to therapy. And I believe it was Penny Nixon once standing here preaching said she'd been in the church for 30 years and the first time in her life she'd actually experienced grace was in a therapist's office. And I kind of discovered as much as I know about theology and however many other things, I know very little about real life and about my emotions and about many other things. So it was a wonderful healing experience. And Mark and I then started some groups. We started Sex Addicts Anonymous groups at churches, and I was doing codependent, groups for wives, and Mark was like on Christian radio talking about it. And that's a whole other sermon, but we kind of learned that when we take something bad that's happened to us and use it to help other people, it redeems that. It redeems us, and it redeems that.
And I was able to walk in a sobriety from the behaviors that were causing all the deception and dysfunction in our marriage for 5 years. But then we moved up to the Pacific Northwest, some stresses came into our life. I wasn't really working my recovery as hard, I kind of slacked off on it, and I crashed and burned very badly.
And then the other side of therapy is you get healthy and you learn to set boundaries. And I kind of knew Mark's an addict, I'm codependent, we're not going to get better together. So we knew it was time to move on and not be in this marriage anymore. And the moment I kind of emotionally separated and said, okay, that's over, 40 years of being gay came rushing into me like you wouldn't believe. Woo! Now people say, how could you go that long and not know? Just the fact that I love, softball, Xena Warrior Princess, and power tools should have been enough to clue in most people, right? Plus hundreds of other things. But, in my world, that just wasn't an option. Growing up, it's just not, you just don't, you find some way to think differently about it. And I'm bisexual. It's not like, I wasn't having a good time. As bisexual people, we like it all, so it's, that's all good. But, but it was a really big faith crisis for me. I'd have 40 years in a church that I am very vested in. Now, and I know what that church says about it. So, what am I going to do? I'm going to pray to God about this. And what am I going to do if God says no? This is just an absolutely overwhelmingly powerful thing that's not going away. So I stressed everyone around me out for a month. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? So the day came and I prayed. And only twice in my life have I had the experience of feeling like God actually directly spoke to me, appeared to me, and this was one of them. And the amazing thing about this moment was I discovered that God is Mel Brooks in a toga. And when I said, is it okay to be gay? The response was, what? Really, that was it. God was saying, this is such a non-issue, it isn't even worth a King James verse in the Bible. That's the voice I've known my whole life. I absolutely knew that's the case. I could trust that. Okay,